Everybody, I'm Stacy with Stacy's Organizing and Decorating for Life, or stacyforlife.com. I'm here to help you organize your thoughts and decorate your perspectives. I want to thank you all for the well wishes you sent to me on my vacation with my family. We had a wonderful time and created some cherished memories, and I'm just really grateful. I'm also happy to be here with you all today. Today's topic is going to be on relationships, and mostly that of the relationship within yourself. So if you like that that's our topic today, please hit the like and subscribe button now, or you can hit it later, just sometime during the video. So my most important thing that I try to do with these videos is express the necessity for humanity at this time. So that's where we're going to end up with this. So please hang in here with me as I share with you. So when I was looking at the relationships with self, what brought this up was that I was reflecting how when we're having relationships with other people, that really is an extension of ourselves. So I always encourage people in new relationships to give themselves 90 days or 3 months before they get truly intimate with somebody, to give themselves the opportunity to get to know that person, to see if they are indeed actually compatible or not. What happens oftentimes, though, is that these people are really physically attracted to each other. And they don't listen to me. They go ahead and have relations. And then what happens is that they rationalize and justify why they want to have relations. And once we start rationalizing and justifying things, that leads to more rationalizing and justifying things, which our soul really knows that the answer is to value ourselves. So when we're not valuing ourselves, our soul is speaking up, giving us that option of second guessing ourselves, which we typically do. So it ends up into us being into a situation where we call ourselves settling. Now we can be settling in relationships, or we can be settling out of relationships, because oftentimes people say, well, my picker is broke, so they just choose to be alone. If you're just alone, that's fine, because that's a conscious choice, and sometimes to be alone is a better option for you. But if you're lonely and sad because you're alone, then that's time for healing. If you desire to have a relationship and you're not in one, because there's not a perfect person. You're not a perfect person, and neither are other people. And this is where we come to getting honest with ourselves and not settling, but to being able to be clear about what we want and desire in our lives. So that's where the healing process comes in, and that's where we receive humanity. You see, because being human is not being humane. See, being human is your material essence out here, and what's happened is that a lot of times people, think that what they need is outside of themselves, and they take it in, that self-care is self-love. Say like when you went to the gym and you went to the hair salon and all of that, but when all of that was taken away, how did you love yourself then? So this is the question that I wondered with people. And then if you were cooped up in the house, were you loving yourself or projecting things onto other people? Because it is true that other people will have issues, because we're all mad here in this world. So other people will have issues, but did you take that stuff on as your own? And did you get sick? Did you say he made me or she made me do this? Or did you say that, they in all your conversations with other people? Were you talking about how they thought or how they felt? Instead of, because when I'm talking to somebody and I say, well, what did you say? And then they say, well, they, or he, or she, then I know that this person is in a codependent relationship, because if I ask you a question about you and you answer with them, then I know that we're talking about something codependent. I read these positive emails in the morning time as well as my regular emails, but I wanted to share one with you because it was right on the mark today. I get the positive Christianity emails. I get the Buddha, Tiny Buddha, which is where this one comes from. I also get the universe, as well as Heather Ashamara, the warrior goddess. So this comes from the Tiny Buddha. If you want to read these emails yourself, this is what lifts me up in the morning and everything. So this one is a quote. It says, self-love, self-respect, self-worth. There's a reason they all start with self. You can't find them in anyone else, and the author is unknown. See, so the first step with knowing ourselves is being honest. That's your first step. Because when we look at our feelings of why do we do the things that we do, say, for me, I learned things the hard way, or I used to learn things the hard way. I've gotten enough training now to where I don't, but I used to learn things the hard way. And so for me to learn what self-love, self-respect, and self-worth is, I experienced and had to acknowledge that I felt self-hate, which is self-loathing. I felt self-deprecation, which is the criticizing of myself. See, the thing is they say hurt people, hurt people. So that's also where we get to second guessing ourselves, right? Because we know when we're hurting other people. It doesn't make it right. Two wrongs don't make it right. And we've heard that time and time again, but it's really true because it in turn hurts our soul. So when we're criticizing and hurting somebody else, we're hurting ourselves too. And it comes, back to looking at our thought patterns. Maybe this was something that we dealt with growing up, that we were always criticized, and so we're never going to feel good enough, and hence nobody else is going to be able to ever do anything good enough because we're going to project that outwards as well as inwards. So this is what I mean about self-love. You can't project something onto somebody else and love yourself if you're being like that. It's a false esteem when you do something like that and think that you're setting a boundary when you decide, I'm not going to talk to them anymore. Well, that's not really setting a boundary and getting clear, because we have to learn to communicate and say, is there something that I did that offended you? And then be able to, think about that and figure out if it's really something that you feel is valid or something that works with you or what. You get to make the choice. So the first step is to get honest. The second step is to think. And the third step is to make the choice. Because I primarily deal with people with addiction, codependency, and grief. And that's all the underlying things are the feelings and the living life on life's terms. And all of us deal with all of those things. We have somebody in our lives or deal with ourselves that have addiction, codependency, and grief. And it's learning to live life on life's terms and to set boundaries and that'll be the next video is boundaries. We'll talk about that, how to set loving boundaries. Because setting boundaries, saying, well, I'm not going to talk to them, and being bitchy about stuff isn't setting a boundary, and that's not self-love. Sometimes you have to cut ties. I'm not saying that. We'll talk about that in the next video. What I'm saying is that when we are reacting, we're hurting other people. The thing is that the third step in this is that we learn to choose our actions, to choose how we're going to act about it. So the first step is getting honest in self-love. The second step is thinking about where this is coming from. And the third step is, choosing our actions if we need to action. I'll share a story with you. So I got to watch Mr. Rogers' It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood on the plane on Sunday when I came in. I got in Sunday night and, got to see some family and my brother. And then I went and stayed the night with my mom and brother, and we took off the next day for New Orleans, Louisiana. I know y'all probably don't care about all that. So in this, intuitively, I knew that I needed to stop for dinner between 5 and 5:30, but I didn't stop. I was anxious to get to the hotel, so I kept driving, anxious, ambitious. So I thought, oh, yeah. And I remember New Orleans 2 years ago, and, New Orleans 2 years ago, the place was popping, but we have COVID now. So while I really knew I didn't, I played dumb to myself. We can do this, conscious, unconscious, whatever. So I knew I needed to stop, but I didn't. And I, drove on. So we get to the hotel, and I realized that I didn't stop. And I asked the guy at the desk, I said, is there any place to eat? And he said, just go a couple of blocks down the street. So I went a couple of blocks down the street. Well, we went a couple of blocks down the street, my mom and brother. We all walked down there, and then we got down there, and we couldn't see a place to eat. So I was going to ask this lady who was walking down the street if she knew a place to eat or anything, if she could recommend anything. There weren't that many people out. I mean, this thing is really, I was shocked at, even New Orleans, not many people out. So I was like, ma'am, can you, because she totally ignored me. She just walked on, and I was like, wow. I never had anybody really just do that, or I didn't remember anybody ever just walking by when I'm trying to talk to them. And so at first I thought, wow, she don't like me, I don't think, because she didn't talk to me. She didn't speak to me. She didn't even look my way. So then I thought, well, maybe that's reverse racism. See, because I acknowledge that there's racism. and so I'm like, maybe that's reverse racism. But that's not really what I want to think either. But then I remembered the movies that I've watched, because that thought came from the movies that I've watched where when black people spoke to white people in the old days, and this was true, this happened, that white people would be insulted. So I thought, well, she really wasn't insulted, though. She didn't act insulted. She just didn't acknowledge me. So then I thought, people sometimes think that people aren't being respectful to them if they don't acknowledge them, but I don't think that I wanted to think that she wasn't respectful to me, because I knew that she really didn't owe me that. She didn't have to speak to me, so I was like, okay. So then I started thinking about Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, man. Mr. Rogers, I thought, he commands respect, but he doesn't do it verbally. He doesn't do it physically. It's just who he is, that you just respect Mr. Rogers. You just know you got to respect Mr. Rogers because of who he is and the way, how humane he is and how he believes and how, and this movie only reinforced that for me, that he could be humane to people who didn't think like he thought, and that he liked to help those that were different, and stuff. So that's all I'm going to tell you about this movie. You got to see this movie. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood if you haven't already. So it was cool that Mr. Rogers is who he was and that he commanded respect but did not demand it. But we as human beings, as humans, see, he was humane, but as humans, we want to demand respect. That was what I was observing in my thoughts. I was like, yeah, humans want to think that people should respect them, and there's those bumper sticker quotes that say respect has to be deserved or earned, and all this. There's all kinds of, so people are always talking about being disrespected. Some people look to be disrespected, but I started thinking about that, and I even had to write stuff down about it because I was just in awe of my thoughts about it. And it's like self-love or self-respect is not demanding that someone give up their thoughts to make you happy, their thoughts or actions to make you happy. That's not self-love and self-respect, but people want to get twisted and say things, and be upset with people because they feel like they're being disrespected if somebody doesn't behave a way that they want them to behave. I have another video about how people treat adults like children by, doing stuff like this. But anyway, it's like, yeah, and that's not self-love and self-respect. Self-love and self-respect is realizing that you're still valuable whether somebody else acknowledges it or not. That just because somebody says or does something, isn't to you, that's just the way that they are, that's just what they're doing. And the thing that we understand in codependence is that we are powerless over people, places, and things. What we do have power over is our thoughts and our perspectives of how we look at that. And then the next thing is again, that we have a choice of our action to take or not, which really there was no action for me to take in that instance. But the thing is each time, sometimes we evolve in different layers to our humanity. So while I may have accepted this in another area of my life, been able to, get honest with myself and look at my thoughts and then to choose to act or not to act, that this was the same thing, that this is just another evolution, that now I know that nobody owes me any respect, or what people think is respect and what is respect, So it really gave me a lot of thoughts about respect from, looking at the whole process of what was happening then, the past, the present, and the future, is that now I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to not acknowledge somebody, but also giving people the benefit of the doubt is maybe that lady honestly could not hear me. That was another part of the process. Maybe she couldn't hear me at all. And maybe she was just thinking her own thoughts. And again, she doesn't owe me her attention. If she's thinking her own thoughts in her own head, she doesn't owe me her attention. So if we can quit getting offended about all this stuff and to be more humane, then what a wonderful place. And that's what I'm trying to help people each week when I come to you. That's what I'm trying to help you realize, because the definition of humanity is, and this is Mr. Rogers totally, but this is what commands respect, is you won't have to demand respect if you behave this way, if you're compassionate sympathetic, and that it's the quality or the state of generous behavior and disposition. It's being willing to give of your time for just a moment, and listen to somebody. You can't fix somebody. Sometimes people just need somebody to listen to. Right now in the world, we're having a big crisis. People don't know how to deal with life on life's terms right now. That's why I wondered how people are doing in their relationship with self, because we have to develop self-love if we're going to survive all of this, because people are getting so offended here and there, and there's massive depression going on, which is leading to relapses, which is leading to overdoses, which is leading to suicides. So all of these are realistic things going on right now. And I'm not saying that everybody that suicides is an addict or anything. I'm just saying that it's the relationships, the breaking down of relationships. And that's the thing, is we don't hug each other as much anymore. And it's understandable. Some people have to guard their health. So we're really in a tough situation where we don't know what to do with life on life's terms. Some people can hug and some people cannot hug. And we need to be respectful of everyone coming from each way. But we need to love one another, whether we can touch them or not. If we can extend an ear, we can pray for somebody to be lifted out of that despair, rather than judging people over the small shit. I know people that are afraid to post pictures of themselves on the internet without a mask because they're afraid of the judgment. And so I don't know. I just wish people would quit judging each other and would just love each other. So I'm asking you to go from your human self to your humane self. And what does it take for you to love yourself? Because when you can love yourself, you can love others. I'm not saying you got to touch them. I'm not saying you got to hug on them. I'm not saying you got to breathe the same air. I'm saying that we can offer some understanding that if we can first get honest with ourselves about our own feelings and thoughts, then that second one is to think, where did this come from? Why am I thinking this? To do that process. And in the end, you'll probably come up with an answer that is loving, rather than just reacting on the second step. And then you get to act on the third step. You get to say, do I need to make a choice of action here? Because sometimes I'm not saying to be a doormat. We'll talk about boundaries next week. So I'm not saying that compassion or sympathy means being a doormat. I'm not saying that compassion or sympathy means trying to solve everybody's problems. I'm just talking about being humane. And so we'll talk about humanity and boundaries again next week in the next video. So I hope that you'll stay tuned, and I appreciate you so very much for following me and subscribing if you haven't already. And if you have subscribed already, I truly, truly appreciate you. And I hope that you'll have a good rest of your week. And I wish you much love and peace. Thank you so much. Bye.